Practitioners October 2020 webinar. This is our bi-monthly webinar, and we're excited to have you here today. So my name is Kaylin Haskovic. I am an intern, a process improvement and change management intern here at CDOT, the Colorado Department of Transportation. And joining me is Kelly Hansen, and she's going to be the co-producer and chat monitor. So she'll be keeping an eye on the chat. Feel free to reach out to her if you have any technology problems or questions also. And she's also an intern. So you may know this by now, but remember to unmute. I feel like that happens every time. Sometimes you start talking and you forget, but we do want to hear from you. So either feel free to unmute when you want to ask questions, or go ahead and put them in the chat and Kelly can read them out for us. And as you are probably aware by now, this is where you can find the chat and the unmute. But again, if you have any questions, we're here to help. And a little bit about Pscp. So what are we? We are a group of change management professionals, and we're here to learn from each other and build knowledge so we can inspire and lead change throughout the world. And there's certainly a lot of change, and so we want to keep this community of practice going and share and learn from each other so that we can ensure that those impacted by change are successful with that change. So thank you for being here, and we couldn't have this group without you today. It's important, we want to hear from you, so we're always looking for presenters. We have a great one today we're really excited about. Thank you, Scott. And we want to share if you want to contribute to our newsletter or share within our LinkedIn group. This group is all about engaging. So we send out surveys, we want to hear from you, and we will today too, so we're excited about that. Change leadership. So I wanted to add this image just because there's going to be more change. Things are coming up. We have the holidays coming up. We have an election coming up. Unfortunately, our COVID rates are higher here in Colorado, so things aren't a straight path, and there's going to be continue to be change. And so that's why it's important to utilize some of the things we talk about in this group and be there to support others with change management. And unfortunately, we don't necessarily know where they're heading, but that's why we're here to help and support each other and learn from each other. So today we have a great speaker, Scott Seiler, who is the manager, training and transition services instructor from the University of Notre Dame. And he's going to talk about two different case studies. It's entitled From Pain to Gain, the Impact of Sponsorship and Change Management. So case study one that went well, maybe one that could have gone a little bit better. We're excited to hear about that. And then for the second portion of our webinar today, we're going to ask you some questions. So we really encourage you to utilize the chat function. And also feel free to unmute. And we'll do some polls to kind of see how things are going here with Pscp and how we can improve. And then we'll have a couple questions if we have time at the end, and we'll wrap it up there. So we have Scott. He's been with the University of Notre Dame for 30 years, and he is a certified change management professional, as well as a project management professional and ProSci certified advanced instructor. So wealth of knowledge, and we are very thankful to hear from him today. And as you can see on the bottom here, we have a link, and Kelly will chat that out as well. But if you could go ahead and pull up the polev.com/Seiler82, that will get us ready for his presentation. So Scott, when you're ready, I can go ahead and stop sharing if you'd like to go ahead and share your screen.
Okay. All right, so you should be able to see my slide, right?
Yep.
Okay, so thank you. I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks to Kaylin and Michelle and the team for asking me to speak today. I really appreciate it. And welcome to everybody from the Public Sector Change Practitioners Community of Practice. It's on the call. We glad you're here, and certainly we'll have some time for questions at the end. So a little bit about, just very briefly about where I work. I work at the University of Notre Dame, which is a private Catholic research university in South Bend, about an hour east of Chicago. We have about 12,000 students altogether, 8,500 undergrads, so we're probably a little smaller than many people think, about 5,000 faculty and staff. Our IT department currently is right around 300 people, and that is most of our department there in the picture that you see. We actually took that picture as a gift for for a departing CIO a couple of years ago. The change management team that we have in our IT department, we have we're very lucky, 3 full-time change managers, a full-time trainer, 1 person who splits her time between change management and training, a full-time communications person, a graphics designer, who I need to thank for helping me with the slide design because it would not have looked nearly this good if I had done it, and 1 person that focuses on professional development of the IT department. And just as an aside, we actually started our own community of practice within the university about a year ago. We have about 140 people involved at this point, so feel really good about that. So here is a quote that I have up on my door. I've had this up for a while. It says, "Our dilemma is that we hate change and love it at the same time. What we really want is for things to remain the same, but get better." Now, Sidney Harris was an American journalist. He passed away in the mid-'80s. So this quote is about 40 years old, if you can believe that. Just really, I think, embodies what we do as change managers. So we're going to talk about sponsors a little bit today. And I wanted to start with the Dilbert cartoon. Dilbert does things so well. Certainly change management is one of his good topics. So the partway through, the boss says, "Change is good for other people, so embrace change or I'll fire you." Is this what we really want out of an effective sponsor? Well, probably not. I mean, we'll see what makes an effective sponsor and what doesn't in the next 30 or so minutes. Next, I want to show you a video. See if any of this sounds familiar, and see if you can pick out some of the sponsor do's and don'ts as we look at the video.
I'm the Chief Executive. I've worked with my fellow directors to create a brilliant strategy. I will now tell him what to change to make my brilliant strategy work.
I'm a manager. She's told me what I need to change to make her brilliant strategy work. I'll now tell him what to do.
I'm a member of staff. He's told me I've got to change. I don't know why, so I won't.
As Chief Executive, I decide which way to steer the ship. I then get him to make it happen.
As a manager, I work out how best to make change happen. And then I get him to do it.
I can't be trusted to think for myself, so he tells me what to do. I just ignore him.
As Chief Executive, I want him to sweep away the old and bring in the new.
As a manager, I want him to break old habits.
What's wrong with how we've always done things? If it ain't broke, why fix it?
As Chief Executive, I tell him not to let up on performance for a second. Onwards and upwards with every change.
She's obsessed with performance, so I tell him it's got to be right first time.
If it ain't right first time, he's on me back about performance. So I just go back to how we've always done it, and everyone's happy.
As Chief Executive, I work on a need-to-know basis. When I think he needs to know about a change, I tell him.
As a manager, I don't tell him about change till the last possible moment, so he doesn't get worried or annoyed.
He keeps me in the dark. That makes me worried and annoyed. I just smile and nod and wait for it all to blow over.
Okay, so we have a sponsor talking about their brilliant strategy, and they are going to steer the ship, and the communication is going to happen on a need-to-know basis. Certainly not the kind of things that we want out of our sponsor, right? We have a sponsor that makes these change decisions and then just expects other people to follow. There's no what's in it for me, right? The WIFM that we talk about a lot of times in change. The ideas might be great, and the sponsor a lot of times thinks, well, all we have to do is get the staff to execute these great ideas. Very limited in terms of communication, no real resistance management for the manager, for the employee. And as you notice, some of the comments that they made, a lot of resistance was there. Do we think this sponsor is going to manage the resistance? Probably not. Right, probably not. So a good video certainly gives us a good sense of where we are with some sponsors. So this is where the poll is going to come in at this point. So if you've had a chance to go to the website, pollev.com/Seiler82, what I'd like you to do is to put in one word that you consider the most important duty of an excellent project sponsor. And we've got some good words kind of popping to the top here. So in the cartoon and the video, we certainly saw some examples of what not to do. Right? Hopefully, as you're entering these, thinking of things that maybe sponsors that did their job well, right? And sponsors have a big responsibility. Our job is to make sure they know how to be effective. So as we look at some of the words popping up here at the top, communication is huge, right? They have to be able to communicate. Support of the project, support of our people. Culture is a big one, right? We certainly have to have a good culture as we go through this. Visibility, there's one we'll talk about visibility as we walk through the rest of the presentation. So that's good, some good words in there. Leadership, decisions, okay, involvement is a big one. Good. Okay, so we're going to move on, but those are some good ideas listed in there. We are going to look at a couple of case studies. So a couple of changes we made at Notre Dame, and the one that didn't work out so well and one that did. So we're going to start with one we call the reorg. And I'm going to go back to my old friend Dilbert and his manager, who says, I just got word that we're about to start a two-step reorg. In step one, we'll centralize functions. In step two, we'll realize it was a huge mistake and reorganize back to the old way. So a little bit of foreshadowing of what's to come here. So we were in a situation several years ago in our IT department where we had too much work, not enough staff. And I know that's not an unusual situation, but we didn't have much in terms of prioritization. People were kind of working whatever they wanted to work on. We had some areas of the university that had a lot of support, some that had little or no support. We had the haves and have-nots is how we kind of refer to them. And then really the best way to get things done within our department, because we had very little prioritization, was to know the right person. If you knew the right person to go to, you could go to them directly and get done what you needed to get done, or at least get on their list. Our CIO at the time decided that he wanted to hire a third-party consultant to address the situation that we had and some of the shortcomings that we had. And this third-party consultant came in, and the first thing that he wanted to do, actually all three of these bullet points, he wanted us to start charging for previously free services. Okay, to say that again, we're going to start charging for previously free services. You can imagine how well that's going to go over. Then, without extending our staff, adding any people, we were going to start serving areas that had little or no service previously. And we were also going to add then these jobs called strategic consultants that would work with some of the vice presidents on campus and really focus their IT strategy on, what were the big things that they needed to get done. And all put together, it had some merit to it, and the way that this would actually change the way we worked. But we had some other situations to deal with too. So our sponsor was our CIO. Now I have to say up front, he's actually a friend of mine. He doesn't work at the university any longer, but a good guy, his heart in the right place. He really wanted to do the right thing for Notre Dame. The first problem was he didn't have a seat at the table, right? He reported to the assistant provost. Now, the way the university is structured, we have the president, who then has the executive vice president and who looks at the administrative side of the house, and the provost that looks at the academic side of the house. Our CIO reported to an assistant provost, so he was down the list a little ways. His boss was not bought into this project, was not brought into this reorg at all. Other stakeholders, so a lot of the vice presidents on campus, also were not bought in. I mean, you can imagine that conversation, that meeting. You want us to pay for things we used to get for free? I mean, what's their whiffum, right? What's in it for them other than trying to control the amount of work that the IT department had? And really, there was little, if any, attempt made to manage the resistance at that level or really at any level. I really think that our CIO and the third-party consultant either ignored the resistance or they just believed that the end product would be so good that people would flip their opinion once they saw it. They would go from a resistor to a supporter once they saw how good this was. And of course, if we've done anything with resistance at all, if you've worked with that at all, that's just not going to happen. Our IT staff, we actually, at the process of this, we did some things well. We had focus groups with our IT staff. We had some listening sessions. After our planning sessions, we always had some good, clear updates. But we did a lot of things not well. A lot of this went back to our sponsor. The IT staff was heavily involved in the reorg meetings, probably too heavily involved. We had, at the time, a few low 200s in terms of number of people on our staff. We would have 40 or 50 people in these reorg meetings that would last 3 or 4 days at a time. Way too much time. A lot of work not getting done. So the people that aren't at the meetings were resenting not only not being involved, but they were resenting the extra work they had to pick up. And a lot of the resistance, again, from that group was not identified and really not addressed at the high levels. The IT department as a whole, I would say, was not bought in. There was a lot of passive resistance. People would say the right things at the right times, but a lot of resistance going on behind the scenes. The other thing that kind of fed into this was everybody was guaranteed no loss of employment, but everybody had to reapply for jobs. So if you wanted to be a manager, a senior leader, a strategic consultant, you had to go through this interview process. So we ended up with kind of a winners and losers, and the losers were not happy, which fed more into the resistance of the change. And then really the transition was not planned well. We didn't have adequate time to learn our new roles. We were just kind of thrown into those. So if you're familiar with ADCAR, which if you're not, we'll talk about it a little more a little later. But if you're familiar with ADCAR, the knowledge and ability pieces were just not there. We didn't have knowledge and we didn't give people time to really build ability. So what were the results? Well, frankly, we made a bad situation worse. It became virtually impossible to get work out of our department. There were gaps in the key roles that we had. There was some amount of decentralization that existed already, but this made the decentralization even worse. More departments became decentralized, and the ones that already were, became bigger. And that's really something that we're still dealing with the fallout of that today. the morale was really at a new low. A lot of people felt like failures. So no surprise, the administration decided to go with a new CIO. The new CIO came in, and very soon after he came on board, he returned us to a structure very similar to the one we had before our reorg. So that Dilbert cartoon really came to life. You know, we're back to doing things the old way. So what did we learn out of this? Well, the sponsor has to be at the right level. Ours was not. We have to get the buy-in of key stakeholders, and our sponsor, in this case especially, our sponsor was a key to that, and it just didn't happen. Passive resistance is real. You know, it's something that we have to deal with. So not just that overt resistance, but the passive resistance. And we need change management. We didn't have anybody looking at how to manage the change. So we really need to have somebody focused on that. So that's our first case. Our second one, I'm calling the new system. So this was a few years ago, more recent than the last case. In this case, we were using Outlook on campus. That was our email system, calendaring system. But we were hosting it on campus, and storage was severely limited, very expensive. We actually had disparate calendar systems on campus, which I'll get into in just a second. We had moved our students to Google a couple of years before this for other reasons, but they were already on Google. And our previous system changes. So, you know, it's always good to know how previous changes have gone, because that's a good predictor of how future changes will go. The previous system changes were moderately successful, I would say. We had, when we switched calendar systems, the last 2 times we had done that, we had a couple of departments that opted out of the change. They just kept using the same calendar system they had been using. So that's how we ended up with multiple calendar systems on campus, which is just not a good idea. What did we do in terms of the change? We actually moved to Google. We had to choose between Google and Office 365, and we did a lot of listening to users. So we had focus groups, we had listening sessions, we did surveys, we did an evaluation, a pilot of both Google and Microsoft, and we ended up choosing Google. Now, the reasons that we did that are the last 4 bullet points here on this page. So we wanted faculty and staff to be on the same system as students, especially so faculty and students could schedule each other's calendars. We wanted all users to have the same really positive experience. The Mac and Linux users didn't do so well on Outlook. Windows did, but we wanted everybody to have a good experience. And then, of course, we wanted support for mobile, and we needed more, and especially more free storage. Now, one thing that's not on here is we didn't include, and we identified these 4 things. These were the keys that we communicated to campus. What we did not include was saving money. We thought it was going to be cheaper to go to Google than what we had with Outlook, but we weren't 100% sure. But more importantly, the sponsor at the time, so our CIO at that time, wanted the message to be about what are the benefits for campus? What's the WIFM for campus? It's not about IT saving money. Like, people wouldn't care about that. So that was the first insight to our CIO, to our sponsor. So this time our sponsor was at almost the right level. So the university structure had changed, and our CIO at this point in time now reported directly to the executive vice president. So a big jump in where he was located in the structure. But he met regularly. He was part of the president's leadership council. So he met regularly with other VPs on campus. And he also was able to get his boss, the executive VP, to help get the provost convinced that this change we were making to Google would be a good thing. Now, our CIO did a great job of getting people to buy in. He talked at many, many meetings all over our organization with these 4 main talking points, right? We really did a good job of making sure we communicated those. Our sponsor did a great job with ProSci's ABCs, which we will cover in just a few minutes. But one of the things he did is he led what we called the white glove treatment. So he, our CIO, and then his leadership team, so our senior leaders, met individually with the top administrators and their admin assistants. We have to include the admin assistants in this, and kind of walked through, here's what the change is going to mean for you. This helped so much because the vice presidents then, as they talked to their people in their areas, their attitude was pretty much like, this change is not going to be too bad. I think we can do this. And it really fostered a positive outlook across campus. Now the picture there is a picture of our CIO dressed up as Yoda, which I'll get to here on the next slide. So our IT staff in this case, we started as a project team. We decided we wanted to have a little bit of fun with this. So we started with a Star Wars theme. Now we really intended it just to be with our project team. But our CIO, bought into this to the point where when we would have town hall meetings where we would talk to our IT department about the progress of the project, he would not only dress up as Yoda, he would encourage everybody else to dress up as their favorite Star Wars character. It was things like that that really helped build some camaraderie and some good feelings about the project. The second point on there, a lot of times we tend to forget that the project team is going through a change along with everybody else. And in this case, our project team, some of them are going to go through some huge job role changes. There was a promise of no loss of employment, but they still were going to have some big changes. So one of the things our sponsor really made sure that we did as a project team was to make sure that we helped facilitate the change with the team as well as everybody else in our department and on campus. It was very important to have that team on board. The Jedi Challenge, so this was a little competition that we had between OIT groups. It was a series of 4 tests to kind of familiarize ourselves with Google products. We encouraged people to use Google search to find the answers. And then you would, as you passed a test, you would start at Padawan, go to Jedi Knight, if you passed the next test, and Jedi Master, and finally Yoda. And our sponsor kind of led the way on this. So he made sure he made Yoda level to really help encourage people to go through this and learn Google. And then we had help from campus as well. One of the key things we did was we established what are called Google Guides. Now, what we did is we gave them some early training. These are people from all over campus. We trained them a little earlier than everybody else, and we had them help with support in their area, and they helped with buy-in. They kind of helped talk to people about what this change was going to be, reassured them it's going to be okay, helped them with some technical things. So that really helped as well. What were the results? Well, from a technical standpoint, the transition went very smooth. And of course, that always helps in a change if the technical piece is done well, right? So that was good. We got very high marks after the transition from people that talked about how smooth the change went and how well it went for them. Now, don't want to steer you wrong. We didn't get 100% of the people buying in, and on the anniversary of our switch to Google, still 5 or 6 years later, we still have a professor on that anniversary date that brings a cake in to his department, and it's decorated that says, "Google sucks." So we still didn't get 100%, but we were close. One of the things that we also noticed is the ramp-up time was a little shorter than we thought it might be. And one way we could tell is the questions that were coming into our help desk kind of changed from how does this work to how can I make it work better? And that was an indicator that people were really starting to catch on. So what did we learn from this? Well, the right sponsor is vital. If we can have the best change manager in the world, but if the sponsor's not at the right level or if the sponsor's ineffective, the impact of change management's muted at best. The white glove treatment that we had, I think, was key to our buy-in across the organization. We have used that concept a time or two since then. We can't use it for everything, but it certainly has come in, it's been very effective for us. Resistance management helps. You know, not every project is an all hands on deck kind of project like this one was, but having the Google Guides really brought kind of a personal touch to the change. So campus-wide, that was a difference maker for us. And then change management makes a difference. You know, having people focused on change management, it really does help, right? So I do want to talk just a minute about how we applied ADKAR through the process. And if you're not familiar with ADKAR or ProSci, ProSci focuses on research and training. ADKAR is their model for individual and organizational change, which they developed by studying over 700 organizations and seeing what worked and what didn't work. ADKAR's building blocks, so you have to do them in order. And the first piece of ADKAR is awareness. And we really built this awareness through the 4 goals of the project. We communicated it many different ways. Our CIO was great at communicating that. And really, at the end of the project, we had people on campus had nothing to do with the project other than being an end user that could tell us, we know why you're doing this, right? Here's the 4 reasons why. After awareness is desire. So we had our change champions, the Google Guides that we talked about. We had campus involved in some of the committees, so that was helpful. We had these open Q&A sessions. So we would just go out onto different locations on campus, give a 7 or 8 minute presentation about what the change was going to be, and then let people ask any question they wanted to. You know, whether it was positive or negative, you know, we took all of it. And I think having that face-to-face really helped. And then we did some fun things. So the picture that's up there is a balloon arch that we had at our HR picnic that we have every summer. We had people get their picture taken with our We're Going Google balloons. This happened to be a couple weeks before we went live, but you know, tried to make it a little fun as well. So after awareness and desire is knowledge. So we had a lot of training before we went live. We would do 30 to 50, you know, large group training. They were demos with handouts. We would go to departments if they requested us. We would go to the department and actually do training for those departments. So that, you know, that really helped us. The Google Guides helped a little bit with training. And then after training, after we went live, rather, we had additional training that we added into our training that we do for campus on a regular basis. So we just kind of kept those going, and that helped not only the knowledge, but also the ability piece as well. So after you do awareness, desire, knowledge comes ability. The Google Guides, again, really helped people because some people don't learn as fast as others. They need a little more time, so the Google Guides helped with that. We added people to our help desk that don't normally work on the help desk. They normally have other responsibilities. But when we went live, they were there to help answer questions and to make sure that, you know, that there wasn't too long of a wait for somebody if they called or stopped in our help desk. And then we tried to make our rollout time at a good, advantageous time for us. And the picture that's there is actually a picture of some of us that we gave special shirts out to the Google Guides. And so that was, picture some of the Google Guides there as well. Then the last piece is reinforcement. And again, the CIO had a lot to do with this. You know, we really felt like we were all in it together. The Star Wars theme helped a lot. We did not have the backsliding that we had had in previous changes. So everybody came along with us in our calendaring and our email. And our sponsor, yes, he dressed up as Yoda, but he did so much to just boost morale, you know, make sure that that we were being taken care of, that everything was going well. So he did a great job. That helped quite a bit. The last thing I want to look at then is some of the ProSci research as it applies to sponsorship. So ProSci does these research surveys every 2 years. They've been doing them for 20 years. The results have been consistent on everything I'm going to show you here across these surveys. So in this one, the same factor is the #1 contributor to success and the #1 obstacle to success, and that is sponsorship. Right? If it's done well, it's the #1 contributor. If it's not done well, it's the #1 obstacle. And we really see that with this graph. Now, this is not a direct cause and effect, but there is a correlation between how well your sponsor does and how successful the project will be. Right? The better the sponsor, the better chance that it will be successful. This is ProSci's project change triangle, and sponsors typically know the left side of this, the executive decisions, right? They know they have to come up with the resources. They know they have to build the strategy. They have to figure out, or at least accept the timing and the dates. Typically, the executive actions are things they don't necessarily know about. So I'm going to put those in a different slide here. So the sponsorship ABCs, as change managers, a lot of times it's our responsibility to educate them that these are the 3 things they need to focus on: being active and visible, building a coalition, and communicating directly. So what do we mean about active and visible? I've got a short video with PJ Fleck, who was hired by the University of Minnesota a couple of years ago as our head football coach. This is his initial press conference.
Remember, I am the how coach. I am the character coach. I am the people coach. The head football coach's job has a lot more to do with people than players. That's the way we look at it. So that is what I told them. And it's an elite group. A lot of them were looking me up and down, left to right, measuring me up. And I kept saying, guys, I'm not much. I get it. I get it. I get it. Okay, I'm not much. All right. But I could feel the energy, and I could feel they've embraced the change. And I know there's going to be a lot of challenges ahead. I know there's going to be people that fit with the change, that don't fit with the change, that like the change, that don't like the change. But change is hard. And everybody wants change until you get change. Well, I got news for everybody. Change has arrived.
So that's just a great example of an active, visible sponsor. First of all, the fact that he talks about his players in terms of being people, not players, I think is important for our sponsors to think of our employees as being people, not employees, right? We want the people to go through the change. But he obviously, good sponsor, just some good sponsor activities there. He knows who's on board. He's going to address resistance, right? He'll continue to help people through the change. He's certainly not going to be a sponsor that's going to sit in his office and just expect other people to change because he said we're going to change once, right? He's going to be very active. That's what we want. So that's active and visible. The second one is building a coalition. I should say we want sponsors or leaders to operate this way all the time, not just project by project. If a sponsor is having to build a coalition because we have a big project coming up, that may be difficult. We want this to actually happen as we go. So in our first scenario, our first case, our CIO was probably Jay in this case, right? That's probably where he was located. The sponsor in our second case, he was probably in this organization maybe F if we looked at the whole campus. He might have been C, but we would like to get A to be the sponsor. That's what we would like to do. But if that's not the case, we want somebody to build a coalition across the organization. So, F needs to make sure that he has already had a relationship with D and E, and possibly with GHI, right, and upwards to B and C. And we want people to get that relationship built so that when we need to call on the relationship, we have it. Right? We don't want to wait until there's a need to have it before we start there. So active and visible, build a coalition. The third one is communicate directly. So we like to try to use face-to-face. These days, Zoom to Zoom, whenever possible, right? We want to use email as little as we can. We have 5 questions. And if you've gone through ProSci training, you'll recognize some of these questions. We have 5 questions we try to make sure the project team and the sponsor can answer, and it really makes a good basis for a communication plan. So what are these 5 questions? What is changing? Why is it changing? That's the one we leave out a lot. Why is it changing now? What's driving it, right? What's the importance of doing it now? What's not changing? It's nice if we can anchor to something. And what's the risk if we don't change? So those 5 questions, if we can get those really focused on, again, the project team and the sponsor, if they all know the answers to those, then we're at least on the same page there. And the last piece then is, who do we want to hear from? And again, this comes from the ProSci research. The business reason for change, 74% of the people want to hear from a high-level executive, right? They want that CEO, president, the executive manager, somebody at the high level of the organization. But for those personal reasons, why should I change as an individual? What's in it for me? What's the WIFM? 78% of the people say we want to hear from supervisor. So it's not enough to have the right message. We need to make sure the message is coming from the right person. Most of the time that's the sponsor, but there are some things we want to make sure come from the supervisor as well. Okay. So with that, please reach out to me by email or through LinkedIn if you'd like after today. Thank you for your time, and let's see if we have time for any questions.
Great, thank you, Scott. I think that it was great to see something that didn't go so well and kind of compare it to something that did go well, and especially love the Jedi theme that makes it fun, and also 2, I think, very relatable case studies. So if you have any questions for Scott, we do have some time. Feel free to put them in the chat. I think I may have seen a couple come through, but Kelly, if you want to read those out. And you're also welcome to unmute and ask Scott directly if you'd like.
Hey guys, we had a few questions come through in the chat here, and we had one. The first one here was from Michelle, and it said, did this successful project help the organization realize the need for CM on future projects?
That's a great question. Yes, actually, we were in the process. We were relatively new at that point, and I started with a team of trainers and kind of turned them into change managers. And this was the big project. This is really the project that showed our IT department and the campus that change management was valid and valued both.
Wonderful, thank you. And then we have another question here from Dennis, and it says, as OIT is looking to build a true change management program, how did the university secure the needed change management position at all levels to help support change efforts?
Yeah, so we actually, so I started in this job just about 10 years ago with one person who had been doing change management for about 6 months. And several trainers. It was a training team. So we actually took those trainers, took them through the ProSci training, started them on working on projects in pairs, so rather than by themselves, and then eventually kind of got away from that to working on projects by themselves. And now we're at the point the last time we had a person that retired. To fill her position, we hired the person that was half training, half change management. So that's where we got our half-time person from. So it's been a slow process, and it's taken us years to get to the point where we are now. But we are so busy. When we first started, we had to beg for projects, and now we're so busy that we need more people.
And thank you so much for that answer. And we have another question here asking, what are the metrics with resistance management? How do you measure that? And would that force acknowledgement? So I guess, what are the metrics for resistant management, and how does that force acknowledgement? Okay,
so we do a lot with stakeholder analysis, where we will measure the impact the influence, the acceptance that people have of the project. So, how big of an impact do they have on the project, or what's their level of influence, and how bought in are they to the project? Those two things. So we'll go through and look at, either by groups or by individuals, where they are on that scale, and we just do a high, medium, low. This is not, this is not too scientific, but we're just trying to tell where's our high highs, where's the people that are, they're high support, and they buy into the project, they're going to be our big champions, and where's our resistors, where are the people that are low support but they have high impact, and we focus on those people, especially those groups especially. The way we measure it, I think, really is, we look at, when we start, where are we with all the people, all the stakeholders, and by the time we get done, where are we? And I think that's that's a good way to measure the resistance.
That's helpful. Thank you, Scott. We have time for about one more question, and Lisa, I see that your hand is raised. Did you have a question you'd like to ask?
Yes, I did. Thank you very much, Scott. Great presentation. I work for Oregon Department of Transportation in the DMV, and so we have a very similar team. We were able to pull that together for our major system implementation that successfully launched both phases. Yay! Yeah. Even in the midst of COVID, we were able to stay on time, on budget, and we had great sponsorship, wonderful sponsorship. So much so that, while we had to convince them that we needed such a team to begin with 5 years ago when we started everything, they see the return on the investment and they want to keep the team intact and have us work on all of the different projects that are out there. Mm-hmm. Now we have to do that convincing of the project leads and the IT managers and whatnot that, yes, this is really valuable. And it sounds like you had to kind of go through that as well. Any tips?
I think it helps to have a big project to be successful with, to start. We tried to work really close with our project managers. At the time when we started, we didn't have a lot of project managers that had change management experience. Mm-hmm. So we tried to bring them along a little bit with us. The other thing we did that helped was we did some training. So I got my certification through ProSci, and we did training of the managers in our IT department. We eventually offered some of the certification training, and we had some project managers go through that. I think a lot of it is they just don't know what it's about necessarily, or they think they know because they've had one little bit of change management information in all the project management that they do. And so I think to give them more information and to to teach them more about what it is, I think that helps. And we try to do that as we went through a project too. Trying to not just say we're going to go off and do change management on our own, but to bring them into the activities we were doing.
Great. Well, thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation, Scott. And you can see his emails up there. So if you'd like to continue this conversation, I'm sure he'd be happy to answer more questions via email. And if you'd like to stop sharing, I can go ahead and share my screen again. Great. Thank you. Yeah. So for this second portion, we have just a bit of time left. We wanted to engage you and talk to everyone to make sure that we're still making this the best community of practice that it can be. So Pscp is about 2.5 years old, and so it's a good time to check in and see how things are going. And as Gary, who's on the call, who's with CDOT, said earlier today, process improvement and change management go hand in hand. So that's what we want to focus on for a little bit. How can we make this the best community of practice possible? So we have a couple questions for you today, and we'd love for you to be engaged. Please chat in the chat box and unmute if you'd like to add anything, but I do have some polls here in Zoom. So the first one regarding our newsletter. So we do send out a newsletter every other month, and I would like to see how often do you read the newsletter? And this is anonymous, so please be honest. It's just going to help us be better and continue to improve. So you should see the poll. I'm getting some feedback. I'll go ahead and looks like it. Okay, I'll go ahead and end it now. So sometimes that's good to hear. If you have any thoughts, we're always looking for people to contribute as well. And if you want your articles published or have anything you'd like to share, please reach out to us. If you have any thoughts on the newsletter, go ahead and put it in the chat. Oh, I didn't share the results. Sorry about that. Here they are. So mostly sometimes. And I understand lots of things come through email. So just wanted to check in, and let's go ahead. And we have one more question. Have you ever contributed to the newsletter? Just a moment. Here it is. So just a yes or no. We want to see if you're interested. We do have our email available if you want to send us anything to add. So mostly no. I'll share this. So we do work, we need help from you guys, so feel free to contribute and email us with any thoughts. And again, anything you think that can improve the newsletter, go ahead and put it in the chat. Okay, and then our last poll question. So thank you, Scott, for presenting today. And I just am curious to see who else is presented. Are the people who are watching, are they presenting? Are they here today? Okay, so we have 3 people who have presented before that are in the webinar. So we're always looking for presenters as well. And if you have any hesitations, or if there's something that would make presenting maybe more appealing to you, and just thoughts in general about how to improve Pscp, go ahead and chat them out. If you have any thoughts, are the newsletters, is the bi-monthly working well? Is the bi-monthly webinar working well? Are you interested in hearing from us more? Do you want it to be more of an open forum discussion at the end? This time we had 1 speaker, which I think was nice because it allowed Scott to go a little bit more in depth on some of his case studies, but previously we have had 2 speakers. Any thoughts about that? And Kelly, if there's anything, or Michelle, anything that you'd like to mention from the chat, we can go ahead and talk about it as a group too, or if anyone wants to unmute and chat, feel free to do that also.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you to our presenter today. It was a very awesome presentation, Scott. And I love the video. Chandra sent out the link to the video so we all can use it. That was really good. It really kind of clarifies how it sometimes works in our organizations when we do change. I think what I'm noticing in chat is not everybody seems to be getting the newsletter. If you want to get the newsletter and you're not getting it, throw it in chat real quick. We'll record the chat and make sure everybody's on that list. And I see that we're getting feedback that they like the single speaker, having just 1 presentation in the hour, so that we can do a deeper dive seems to be a good theme here. Thank you guys for the feedback.
Yeah, thank you very much. So that's good to know that 1 speaker's working, and if you have any thoughts about what is working well, feel free to share those as well. And continue to chat, and we'll go, and we just have a couple more things. So thank you all for contributing and for engaging. That's what makes this community of practice so great. So stay connected and stay involved. And Kelly can go ahead and wrap us up. We just have a couple more items, and thank you, Scott, again for joining us.
Yeah, thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
Hey everyone, thank you, Scott, again. For the announcements that we have, the newsletter will be coming out in November, and we'll make sure that all of you are getting it for the ones that had mentioned in the chat that you weren't. Our next webinar will be in December, and let us know if you would like to create or provide content for the newsletter, or if you would like to be a presenter. And then also, Kaylin, who is the lead producer that you've been seeing throughout today, will be leaving us, and Shuyi will be going to a full-time position, which will be a big, exciting new adventure for her. Congratulations, Kaylin. And she has been absolutely incredible asset to our PSCP team and has done a tremendous job with improvements behind the scenes. She has been a host and a producer of the PSCP webinar and the other TLF one that we have. And she has also crafted the newsletter that you guys have gotten. We are going to really miss her. And thank you so much, Kaylin, for your time, leadership, and insights to everything. And then the next announcement that we have is that we have a new intern named Jacob, who is online, I believe, today. And he started about 2 weeks ago. And so you will probably be seeing more of him as the webinars progress, and he'll be helping with co-producing in the future. Welcome, Jacob, and I will be the one that will be leading the next webinar in December. And the last announcement that we have here is to really just thank everyone for coming in and tuning into this recording. Your continued dedication to the change management and helping people adjust and adapt to change is something that we take for granted, especially in our current times. Thank you so much, everyone. There will be a lot happening before our next webinar. You are all shining examples of how to change. You help us shape a positive culture and bring awareness to the need for change. So thank you everyone for tuning in and your continued support for PSCP. Oh my goodness, I don't know why that's so difficult for me to say today. Please stay safe, and until next time, keep calm and apply change management. Thanks everyone, and thank you, Scott. This is our website. I believe we have it in the chat as well. Please feel free to visit it and see our recordings and our newsletters that will be here, and the presentation will also be here. So please log in and you can see Scott's wonderful presentation again. And this is our LinkedIn group. We like to have updates in here, so please join our LinkedIn group. Stay updated this way as well.
Great.
Thank you,
everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.
Thank you.